Good afternoon. I want to thank folks who are standing with me this morning or this afternoon, who are all known to all of you very well. But I want to thank County Sheriff Todd Baxter, Rochester Police Department Chief David Smith, County Executive Adam Bello, and of course Mayor Malik Evans for joining me this afternoon. And I want to begin first by just pointing out and thanking the Rochester Police Department, the Monroe County Sheriff's Department for the heroics yesterday in a tragic situation, but one that helped safeguard members of our community, and we should be always grateful for their constant vigilance and support of efforts to keep our community safe. As we've said before, we're committed to a collaborative, all-hands-on-deck approach by government to strengthen public safety, and today is further proof of that partnership. And I want to thank the many law enforcement representatives who have stood with us and talked about the important issue we want to talk about today. And again, members of law enforcement work tirelessly day in and day out to keep our neighborhoods safe. And I continue to be, with the other members of this community, grateful for their work. And I'm particularly thankful for their work to address what has become a crisis in our streets. I've talked about it before, the alarming rise in vehicle thefts. Much of these thefts stem from viral videos that are produced and circulating on TikTok. I last spoke about this issue probably about 6 weeks ago. We were just a month into 2023 and had seen 160 cars stolen off our streets. Sadly, and this is in my mind astonishing, we've double, triple checked this with the folks behind me, 775 automobile thefts were not even at the end of March. We saw 5 just last night. And as many vehicle thefts as we've had January through the middle of March this year is as many as you would typically have from January to August. That's how much this has accelerated in the last several months. And not only does it pose a danger to our children, families, and businesses, it places an undue burden and strain on our law enforcement, tying up resources at a time when we are facing already challenges and they're already overburdened. This just puts greater pressure on the work that these men and women are doing. Earlier this year, as many of you know, I called upon the CEOs of Kia and Hyundai to address the known security flaws in their vehicles, and those flaws are being exposed by videos shared on TikTok. But that's just one part of the problem. We have to acknowledge the role TikTok itself plays in perpetuating these crimes, and the role they could and should play in preventing them. To be clear, those who commit crimes need to be responsible for their actions. We're not trying in any way remove that responsibility from people who are committing crimes. But we don't need companies like TikTok playing an active role in facilitating these crimes and putting information on how-to videos for people who would misuse them. That's why I've joined with my partners in law enforcement to hold TikTok accountable. Today we're releasing a joint letter sent to TikTok calling on them to crack down on the rampant criminal activity shown on their platform. Their guidelines, their own guidelines, prohibit these exact content encouraging vehicle thefts, yet the videos continue to go viral due to TikTok's carelessness and lack of enforcement of their own guidelines. So to be clear, they have guidelines. They just choose to ignore them, and they've done this repeatedly. TikTok has to take responsibility for the harm they're causing to our community and countless others across the country by making immediate and drastic changes to better regulate that platform. And, this has been, for me, a long-standing issue. Last year when they were doing different TikTok challenges that threatened school officials, that harmed school teachers, that destroyed property, I went back and forth with a series of correspondence to TikTok to try to encourage them to make better use of their behavior. When our law enforcement officials are forced to spend resources responding to TikTok trends that could easily be policed by TikTok themselves, it means less available resources to respond to the multitude of other crises like the one our law enforcement dealt with yesterday. TikTok has a moral responsibility to live up to their guidelines and put a stop to these dangerous activities, and we're urging them to do so immediately on behalf of this community. So I'm grateful to Sheriff Baxter, Chief Smith for their partnership, and as well as my great friends, the county executive and the mayor, for standing with us on this important issue. I'm looking forward to our continued work together to create stronger and safer neighborhoods. And with that, it's now my privilege to introduce a longtime friend and a leading advocate on all issues in public safety in our community. That's Sheriff Todd Baxter. Sheriff Baxter.
Thank you, Congressman. Appreciate that. Just to illustrate a few more numbers, if you didn't just get enough out of the Congressman, in 5 months, the county outside of the city of Rochester had almost 1,300 stolen vehicles. 1,300 stolen vehicles. Over 900 were Kias and Hyundais, obviously attributed to the TikTok videos. That's man hours wasted. That's 900 victims created in our community. That's 900 families looking how they're going to get to work tomorrow, working with their insurance companies. Kids are late for appointments. That's chaos. Total chaos in our community. We have a responsibility. I believe in the First Amendment. I believe in free speech. I never tell anybody what to do on social media, in particular when they're bad-mouthing the sheriff. That's part of the job. But we also believe that there's a threshold. You know, we believe in the First Amendment, freedom of speech, but you can't yell fire in a movie theater, correct? This is the same thing. We got 900 stolen vehicles flying all over our county, car pursuits, foot pursuits, endangering our community. This is a straight threat to our community that TikTok refuses our request to just pull these videos as quick as possible. Police your own. It's endangering the members of our community, and that's unacceptable. That's the simple thing we're asking for. We'll hold those perpetrating the crimes accountable. We'll continue to pursue them. We'll prosecute them. We'll take care of the victims. But TikTok has a part to do this. So all we're asking is a simple thing. Police your own so we can take care of the community that we're supposed to be policing back here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff, and I think says it very well about the responsibility that TikTok has. Let me now introduce another partner and friend who's doing a great job as the police chief of the city of Rochester, Chief Dave Smith.
Thank you. So some city numbers to add onto what the sheriff was saying. So far this year in the city, we've had over 500 stolen Honda and Kia vehicles. I'm sure everyone saw this morning on the news. We did have incidents last night. I think we had 5 vehicles that were crashed into area businesses. Until last night, we were seeing some success. The stolen cars had peaked in February. At that point at the peak, however, we were losing 80 vehicles per week. That's 80 vehicles being stolen per week in the city of Rochester for Kia and Hyundais. In mid-February, we did start giving out our steering wheel locks, which were provided to us by Kia and Hyundai. So far, we've given out over 900 steering wheel locks. I think we still have a few left. Last I saw, there was some left, so we do have them available. We have seen a decrease, but again, you know, many times I've stood up here and spoken as a parent to parents, you know, check your kids' social media. But it's not just on the parents, it's on the social media platforms themselves for allowing this to continue. I mean, everyone, and not just youth, everyone in our culture, you know, they're buried in their phones. Everyone is buried in their screen is their world, and when this is what they're seeing, all of a sudden it becomes acceptable, it becomes the norm. But I mean, these are real working people that own these cars that now have to go get their car out of the pound, that now have to go get their car repaired, that now don't have a way to go to work, that now have to rent a car, you know, and on a middle income family, that's a huge loss. It may be the only family car, and now they don't have a means to go to work to take the kids to school. So it's not a game. We take it seriously, and we ask that, you know, social media, again, follow your own policy, and please treat it with the seriousness that it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And I do want to point out, where people may say, how is it important to write letters to business leaders, corporations like TikTok? I do remind people that we went to Kia and Hyundai 6 weeks ago, and as a result of our work, they responded quickly. They're making changes. They sent anti-theft devices to the city, and we'll continue to work with people. We hope people will be responsible. And I think for my next two people that are going to come to the podium, look, they're working tirelessly on quality of life issues, improving economic development opportunities in the county and the city. And yet this is a challenge, because when people fear, when people have concerns about public safety, it tends to erode all the great work being done by the county executive and by the mayor. So I've asked them to come and share a few words with us as well. And let me bring to the podium the County Executive Adam Bello.
All right, thank you, Congressman Morelli. I want to thank you for bringing all of us together and for your leadership in coordinating these national efforts to demand TikTok enforce its own guidelines. I mean, this is really what it's all about. We're not even asking them to do something new. We're asking them to enforce their guidelines that are already in place to stop promoting this criminal activity. So I want to thank you for your leadership. I want to thank my partners in government, the police chief and the sheriff, the work that they're doing, and the men and women of the Rochester Police Department and the Sheriff's Department and all our town police departments for the work that they're doing responding to these crimes in our community. And of course, the mayor of the city of Rochester for his partnership here when it comes to dealing with all the issues around public safety in our community. What we've been seeing here, what the sheriff just said, should be alarming. Over 1,000 in the county in just the last 5 months, cars have been stolen. And this is clearly unacceptable. And it becomes even more unacceptable when you see that there's these how-to videos that exist out there that are showing our young people how to do this, and it's promoting criminal activity, and that these videos remain on their social media platforms against their own guidelines. But what's also alarming about this is that it's not just about the impact of the stolen vehicle, right? Yes, there's that impact on the person whose vehicle has been stolen, but there's also a real safety risk here associated with that. And I want to talk about a couple examples. First of all, just last fall, 4 Buffalo teenagers were in a stolen Kia, including a 14-year-old girl who lost her life in a rollover crash on the Kensington Expressway. In January, 4 teenagers here crashed a stolen Hyundai on South Union Street, where they were picked up by police while trying to steal another one in the same neighborhood. Just last week, a pair of teens were arrested here for crashing a stolen Kia into another car. And this was just the second time in just 2 weeks that one of the teens had been arrested for stealing a car. This is a safety issue for our young people who are falling into this trap, who are seeing these videos and are out there committing these crimes. It's a safety issue for the rest of the community as well, as these young people are driving these cars after they're being stolen. So we need to stand in solidarity. I'm glad to be here with my congressman, my sheriff, the police chief, and my mayor to say enough is enough. We need social media companies to have this moral obligation, to realize their moral obligation, to stomp out videos that encourage criminal behavior, period. So it's long past time for TikTok to enforce its own guidelines, to stop promoting irresponsible criminal content that glorifies crime and violence and gives, particularly our young people, that step-by-step instruction guide on how to do it. Think how outrageous that is, that it's right there at their fingertips. I, too, am a parent of 2 children. They're 11 and 13, right? And they're looking to see how they're making their way into the world and how they have access to these devices and to these videos. And so while we as parents, as the police chief said, we have a responsibility to look at what our kids are seeing online. Our schools are working hard at this. I know for firsthand experience, our teachers, our principals, our guidance counselors, they're seeing these videos and the impact that it's having in our schools. But we also need the rest of the community. We also need these companies, though. They have to step up, too. They know what's on their platforms. They have a responsibility as well to enforce their guidelines, but also to look at what's on their platform, look at what they're putting out there into the world, what they're putting into the hands of our young people in our community, and realize the moral and ethical obligation that they have to our children and our communities and the damage that these videos are doing. So, thank you.
You know, we've all been 15. And being a 15-year-old boy in particular, you could be persuaded to do a lot of silly things. And I think we've all been there, at least all of us have been there. But, you know, I know decades ago when I was 15, you didn't have access to the kind of information you have now. You weren't persuaded to do things that would really lead to real harm, real dangers, and potentially death, as the county executives pointed out. So this is really why this is so important and why this is such a danger to people. Let me now bring to the podium another great partner and friend who's working so hard to revitalize the city of Rochester. And again, these are the challenges that the mayor and others face. And let me bring him to say a few words, Mayor Malik Evans.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you all for being here. It's good to be here with Congressman Morelli, Sheriff Baxter, and of course my police chief, Chief Dave Smith, County Executive Adam Bello. It really does take all levels of government to address this issue. Think about this. we literally have, in this country, targeted towards young people, videos online on one of the most popular apps in the world that is basically a how-to kit on how to steal Kias and Hyundais. Think about how outrageous that is. Well, what is even more outrageous is the fact that TikTok has not taken down these videos. Every time I see a Hyundai or Kia stolen, and the police department does a great job recovering them, I always add up in my head, I put my banker hat on, and I add up in my head how much I want to send TikTok a bill for the cost that it costs in police time, that it costs in man hours of lost wages that these individuals who are losing their cars have to end up paying for. You've seen the stories. Many of you have covered the stories ad nauseum of this situation that's happening. I am all for personal responsibility. And no one is forcing anyone to steal a car. We are not saying that. But what the congressman is saying in this letter that he's sending to TikTok, and what all of us are saying, is that TikTok bears a large part of the responsibility, as does Hyundai and Kia. Now, Hyundai and Kia, in their defense, they're going to finally get around to fixing the switch, making sure they can't do that, and at least they had the good sense to pay for the steering wheel locking devices that many of us have been handing out in the county. So they did their part. But the question now is, TikTok, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because they are contributing to the delinquency of minors. And I say minors because if you look at the numbers, almost 90% or more of these cars that have been stolen have been by individuals that are under the age of 18. So we are incentivizing, TikTok is incentivizing bad behavior by allowing these videos to continue to perpetuate themselves in the internet. And that needs to stop. And they need to make sure that those videos are taken down so that way we can make sure that we put positive images of our children. Now, the last point I'll make is that if you go to China and you're in China and you're watching TikTok, you know what the videos are about? You know what the videos are about that the kids are watching in China? First off, they're only allowed to watch it for a certain period of time. So they're not allowed to be on it all day in China, where TikTok is, that's a Chinese company, number one. And number two, you know what the videos are about? What do you want to be when you grow up? Science, information, business. But that's not happening here in America. They think that what we want to manufacture in America is how to steal Kias and Hyundais. And as the county executive said, it's dangerous. It has real-world consequences. Smash and grabs. Almost all the smash and grabs that we have seen have been individuals under the age of 18, and they have been in Hyundai and Kias. Hyundai and Kias that were taught to them on how to steal them, they got the how-to kit out of TikTok. So it's totally unacceptable. And we need change on this now. And I want to applaud the congressman for bringing this because it's going to take the federal government, I believe. Because what the congressman is talking about, my colleague, you can pick the city. Milwaukee, Dearborn, Michigan, New York City, Buffalo, pick the city. Pick the city and they're dealing with the Kia boys. Pick the city. The last point I'll make too, and I said this to the chief, what I'm also concerned about is the safety of those young people. Because the individuals that I'm talking to, they are tired of having their cars stolen. So we need to protect those children from individuals that are upset about their cars being stolen. There's been viral videos of individuals taking the law into their own hands. And we want peace on our streets. But TikTok has to take responsibility for those videos. And the easiest thing they can do, the simplest thing that they can do, is make sure that they remove those videos. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think what the mayor says is so important to remember. This isn't something that's unique to Rochester. This has happened all over the country. But what I think is really important to note is the leadership of this community stepping forward to speak out and to make clear to TikTok and others how important this is and the responsibility that they have. So I really appreciate Sheriff Baxter and Chief Smith and Mayor Evans and County Executive Bello for joining us here this morning. And with that, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. Yes, sir.
What more can be done if TikTok refuses to abide by their standards and their regulations?
Well, look, I think at a federal level, TikTok is facing real challenges, and they're really going to need to take responsibility for what they're doing. You may know we've removed and don't allow TikTok, the app, to be placed on any federal devices. So I have an iPad that I take with me everywhere for work and work-related things, but you can also have other apps. Occasionally, I might read a book on Kindle. I have a Kindle app. I might watch my Cardinals late at night, play baseball, so I have the MLB app. You can't have the TikTok app on any federal devices. But more importantly, we're now talking about in Congress looking at the standards that apply to media companies, which you are held liable for things that appear on your networks and stations. And that does not apply. There's special exemptions for social media companies. And I think, as others have said, we respect First Amendment rights, the right to express yourself. But more and more, when we see the lack of responsibility and the lack of concern from social media companies, for what's on their platform, we're getting closer and closer. And you can see this in a lot of the reports coming out of Washington. I think Congress may step in. I think it's unfortunate if we may be compelled to do it, but we're going to make sure that we're watching out for the interests of American citizens. First and foremost, if they don't take responsibility themselves, then I think it's likely Congress will intervene and do it for them.
Congressman, do you think that we're putting too much of an emphasis on TikTok and not enough on legislation that allows these people to steal the cars, get an appearance ticket, and as we've heard on multiple occasions from Sheriff Baxter, from Chief, from Lieutenant Bello, and reoffend? Do you think we need to reevaluate legislation?
Well, look, I would leave it to my law enforcement professionals to talk about reoccurrence. You know, a lot of that will fall at the state level in terms of how, if people are apprehended, how they're treated. Many of these, as was pointed out by the mayor and others, are youthful offenders. I mean, they're 14, 15, 16-year-olds. So there's challenges about how you prosecute them. So, yeah, look, I don't want to remove responsibility from the people actually perpetrating the crimes and those who are making these really bad decisions. But what I also want to do is make sure that corporate partners like Kia and Hyundai, as well as TikTok, do everything in their power to make sure that they're limiting exposure and putting ideas in people's heads and putting how-to videos. I mean, think about it. A how-to video on how to steal a car. I mean, it's beyond troubling. I don't even know how to give voice to how outrageous that is. And here you have a company who has guidelines that suggest they'll remove those videos, and they're doing nothing about it. So I think it's a combination of all things I said. This is a all-of-government effort. And look, we also know that crimes escalate. You start to do something, you get away with it, or you think you've gotten away with it. Maybe the next time it's something more dangerous, and there's an escalation. So I do think that we have to continue to work with our law enforcement partners, with our partners in state government, with our corporate partners to try to make sure that we do everything we can to stop this behavior.
Congressman Roberts, we've seen small business owners who have been impacted by this file a class action lawsuit against Kia, Hyundai, or TikTok.
I'm sorry.
Class action lawsuits among small business owners.
You know, I don't know about that, and I haven't seen anything to suggest it, but there's a lot of small businesses that are now moving away from urban centers because they're afraid of this kind of violence and this kind of destruction of property. It's the last thing the mayor wants to see, the last thing any of us want to see. We want to see people investing. We want to see small businesses grow. There are vibrant neighborhoods all over this community. We want them to continue to flourish. But people, after a while, say, okay, if this is going to be a regular occurrence, maybe I'll think about closing my sandwich shop. Maybe I think I'll move somewhere else. Or for people who are maybe nearing retirement, say, you know what, I think we've had enough. That's the real danger. I talked about quality of life in an amazing community like Rochester, but people do make decisions based on what they think their potential liabilities are, the fears are that will affect them. And I'm certainly happy if others want to comment, but I just think this has a profound effect on everybody throughout the community. And it seems low level to some folks. Steal a car. Okay, maybe that's not as important as a homicide, but boy, this gets at how people feel about their community, about the safety for their families. So that's why I'm so grateful to the leaders of this community standing with us together on this.
And on that note, could I actually ask the mayor a question?
Sure.
If that's okay. So we saw you file I think a class action or a lawsuit last year for gun companies like Smith & Wesson, things like that. Are you considering doing the same thing here when it comes to the Kias and Hyundais and for those small business owners to get some sort of aid?
Not yet, but I do think that TikTok should send me a check for all the man hours and police time that it's taken. At least Kia and Hyundai sent lock devices. TikTok does bear a lot of this responsibility, period, because they are going against their own policies that says they shouldn't have this nonsense on their platforms. So, it's really not social media; it's social nonsense that we're seeing, and it's endangering young people. It's contributing to the delinquency of minors. Not saying that they are causing it, but they're contributing to it. So would we ever do I don't know. I'm not a litigious person. However, I do think sometimes it does call for using every tool you can in your toolbox, and everyone that knows me knows I'm about every tool. I try to be a soft hammer first, and I think that this is the soft approach that we're taking right now. I think that this is very sensible what the congressman is asking for, right? I mean, this isn't anything outrageous. This isn't anything that's like, oh my God, how could he be asking this? This should not be controversial, right? This should be very simple. If I was TikTok, I would look and look at this letter and say, oh, you know what? He's right. We're going to scour it. We got all these smart computer people. We're going to scour this and remove all these videos. Now, if they don't do that, then I think, the congressman can speak better than me, better than this than I can. Then I think the federal government may have to step in and see. But they have an opportunity right now in this moment in time. And Rochester is only a microcosm of the rest of the country. 1,000 cars. That's Rochester. Multiply that times 50 states. That tells you that should tell TikTok what they need to do, and they know what they need to do. The right thing. Remove those videos.
Anyone else?
Congressman, oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Just in terms of what this could potentially set as far as a precedent for other social media companies with other concerning elements to it, thinking something like YouTube. There's obviously connected cases with child porn, things like that. So what's your hope in terms of obviously TikTok being based in China, but how could this make a statement or a precedent for other social media companies in terms of how they operate and the criminality associated with that?
Well, look, as I said, the federal government extended to social media companies liability shield that is not available to broadcast media companies. And that was in the early days of social media. And their argument would be, look, we're just providing the platform, we're not providing the content. But it's really changed over time. And a company like TikTok in particular, they may have guidelines that they just don't abide by them. So they're not removing these videos. And when we had the TikTok challenges where people were tearing urinals off school walls and were punching teachers and engaging in all kinds of behavior, I wrote to TikTok, said this is completely unacceptable and you're promoting this by putting these video challenges on your platform. They responded by saying, oh, it's not us, not TikTok, even though it was. We take these videos down immediately, which they don't. So we have to continue to put pressure on them, and I believe two things will ultimately, well, one thing, that's their bottom line, and it's financial. And when they start to see governments pushing back and communities pushing back, or people not using it because we're taking them off the ability to put those platforms, that's going to hit them in their bottom line, and that's going to change their behavior. But failing to do that, again, there's hearings going on in Washington about whether or not those liability protections ought to be discontinued. And frankly, I think TikTok is making a great argument for why we should really limit their liability protections when it comes to things on their platform.
I guess I have the same question, but I'll ask it anyway. TikTok obviously based in China. They don't have to really abide by our laws. So how challenging is that?
No, they do have to abide by our laws in the United States. I mean, they may be a foreign company, but there are a lot of foreign companies that do business in the United States. So in the United States, their assets can be sued. They can be subject to whatever we decide to do as a country regarding liability, regarding best practices, regarding appropriate repercussions for their actions. So, and frankly, look, not to get into the whole national security issues, but we're concerned about all the information about Americans that go back to their parent company. So we're, by being on TikTok, you're sending information to the Chinese government, which is, I think their stated intentions relative to the United States are pretty clear. But for their work here in the United States and for our protection of our communities, property, and health and safety, we're obviously getting serious about what they can do and what they can't do.
Sheriff Baxter and Chief Smith, are one of you able to confirm that all of the incidents from last night involved Hyundais or Kias?
Yes, they did.
Stolen?
Yes.
And are you able to touch on if any of those, the frequency that we're seeing of reoffenders?
I don't have that in front of me, and I wouldn't want to speak in error, but there are a few examples that have come to my attention. So they're definitely out there. They're occurring.
Anything else? Thank you again to the mayor, the sheriff, chief, and the county executive. Thank you all for being here this morning. Thanks.